Donald Trump has once again made headlines with a bold economic threat, this time directed at the BRICS nations. He has announced that if BRICS nations dare to discuss any alternative to the US dollar, he will impose a massive 150% tariff on their exports. But why is Trump so alarmed? According to him, BRICS is attempting to dismantle the US dollar's global dominance by creating an independent financial system that could bypass US control. His response to this perceived threat is economic coercion, using tariffs as a weapon to punish any BRICS country that even mentions the idea of de-dollarization. At the heart of this issue lies a crucial question. If BRICS were truly irrelevant, why would Trump feel the need to impose such draconian tariffs just to stop them from creating their own currency? After all, if the US dollar is as strong and invincible as Trump claims, why would Washington be so afraid of BRICS moving forward with its financial system? The answer to this is clear. America is in a state of panic, and Trump's reaction shows the deep-seated fear of losing control over global finance. But can the US really stop BRICS from achieving its financial goals? Let's delve deeper into this complex issue. For almost a century, the US dollar has been the world's reserve currency, providing Washington with immense power over global trade and finance. This status has meant that countries around the world are forced to hold large reserves of USD, use it to settle international trade, and rely on American-controlled financial systems such as SWIFT, Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication. This system has allowed the US government to manipulate global markets, print money at will, and impose severe sanctions on countries that refuse to follow Washington's orders. However, BRICS, comprising Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is actively working to break free from this system. The group is exploring alternative financial mechanisms that could reduce the world's reliance on the US dollar. And Trump's extreme reaction reveals just how threatened the US is by these efforts. At the core of this financial dominance is the petrodollar system, which has underpinned US economic supremacy for decades. In the 1970s, Washington made a deal with Saudi Arabia, ensuring that all oil transactions would be conducted in US dollars. This deal forced every oil-importing nation to hold reserves of USD, artificially boosting the value of the dollar and making it the de facto currency for global oil trade. But now, BRICS is challenging this system. China and Russia have already abandoned the dollar for their bilateral trade, with over 90% of their transactions now being conducted in yuan and rubles. India, in turn, is buying Russian oil in rupees, thus cutting the dollar out of the energy transaction altogether. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have openly discussed the possibility of selling oil in yuan, signaling that even America's historic energy allies are considering alternatives to the petrodollar. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, has already confirmed that the US dollar's dominance is shrinking. Back in 2000, the dollar accounted for more than 70% of global reserves. However, by 2023, this share had fallen to just 58%, and the decline is expected to continue. Meanwhile, China's digital yuan, a digital currency controlled by the Chinese government, is already being tested for use in international oil trade transactions. This development marks a significant step toward creating an alternative financial system that could compete with the US dollar. If BRICS succeeds in launching an alternative global reserve currency, the US will lose its most powerful tool of global influence. Without the world's reliance on the dollar, Washington will no longer be able to impose sanctions, control capital flows, or manipulate markets to its advantage. The US's ability to print money and impose financial sanctions has been crucial to its global dominance. The US is built on debt, and that debt is sustained by the global demand for the dollar. But if BRICS and other countries begin trading in their own currencies, this artificial demand for the USD will disappear, sending inflation skyrocketing in America and weakening Washington's ability to project power on the global stage. This is why Trump is so afraid of BRICS's financial ambitions. The BRICS bloc isn't just creating an alternative currency, it is laying the foundation for a world where the US no longer calls the shots. The stakes are high, and Washington knows that if BRICS continues to push forward with its dollarization strategy, the US's financial power will diminish, leading to a financial crisis in America. The dollar's global importance will erode, and the US will no longer hold the same leverage over the global economy. Trump has tried to portray himself as a tough leader, claiming that his threats forced BRICS to back down. However, the reality is far from this narrative. Instead of collapsing under pressure, BRICS has expanded at an unprecedented rate. At the 2023 BRICS Summit, 5 new countries, Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the UAE, were officially welcomed into the bloc. This expansion marks one of the largest geopolitical shifts in decades, as more nations turn to BRICS as a counterbalance to Western financial dominance. Furthermore, countries like Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Nigeria, and Thailand are actively discussing joining BRICS in the near future. Trump's weapon of choice, tariffs, has proven ineffective in the past. In 2018, he imposed massive tariffs on China, hoping that it would force Beijing to change its trade policies. Instead, China retaliated by cutting agricultural imports from the US, devastating American farmers and causing prices for consumer goods to soar. Manufacturing jobs also declined due to the rising costs of imported materials. Now, Trump is threatening to impose a 150% tariff on BRICS nations, but this strategy could backfire even further. The US relies heavily on BRICS imports, including electronics, rare earth metals, agricultural products, and pharmaceuticals. If these goods are heavily taxed, American companies will be forced to raise prices, leading to even higher inflation and a weakening economy. Meanwhile, BRICS has alternatives to US markets. China can redirect its exports to Africa and Latin America, while Russia has expanded its energy trade with India and the Middle East, thus reducing its reliance on the US market. Brazil and South Africa, major exporters of food and natural resources, are strengthening their trade relationships with China and Europe. As a result, Trump's tariff strategy is unlikely to succeed. Instead of weakening BRICS, it will only push the group to accelerate its plans for economic independence, ensuring that Washington's influence continues to decline. Trump's aggressive trade policies are not just failing to weaken BRICS, they are also isolating the US from the global economy. While BRICS nations are forging new trade relationships, the US is losing influence even among its allies. Bilateral trade between China and Russia reached a record $240 billion in 2023, proving that Western sanctions have failed to isolate Moscow. India is increasing its energy purchases from Russia, moving away from the US-dominated oil market. Furthermore, trade between Africa and China reached $282 billion in 2023, signaling that African nations are increasingly prioritizing partnerships outside Western influence. The US is not only isolating itself from BRICS, it is also alienating its closest allies. Trump's aggressive tariff policies have damaged long-standing relationships with countries like Mexico, Canada, and the European Union. By imposing tariffs on Mexican and Canadian imports, Trump has pushed both nations to strengthen trade ties with China. At the same time, the European Union is actively exploring alternative financial systems, as concerns grow over US sanctions and the dollar's instability. European nations are considering diversifying trade settlements in currencies like the yuan and euro. By waging trade wars even against its allies, Washington is accelerating the decline of the US-led economic order. The future is clear. BRICS is no longer just reacting to US economic threats. It is actively building an alternative financial system that could reshape global trade forever. The foundation for this financial revolution is already being laid. Russia has proposed a gold-backed BRICS currency, which could become a direct competitor to the US dollar in international trade. A currency backed by real commodities like gold and natural resources would offer stability, protection against inflation, and a secure alternative to fiat currencies controlled by Western central banks. Unlike the US dollar, which is based on debt and can be printed without limits, a gold-backed BRICS currency would maintain real value, making it highly attractive to nations seeking a stable long-term store of wealth. China is leading the charge in digital finance, with its digital yuan being tested for international oil transactions. This proves that the US dollar is no longer the only viable option for global trade. China's digital currency is far ahead of the West in terms of adoption, with countries like Saudi Arabia and the UAE exploring its use for oil sales. If major oil producers begin accepting payments in yuan instead of dollars, this could signal the end of the petrodollar system that has kept the US dollar dominant for decades. One thing is clear, Trump's 150% tariff threats will not threaten BRICS, they will only make the bloc stronger. Every time Washington attacks BRICS financially, the group finds ways to reduce its reliance on the US even further. Trump's tariff threats are not a deterrent. They are fuel for BRICS to accelerate its economic independence. As BRICS expands its financial networks, more countries will join the movement to break away from the US-led economic order. The world is moving toward a multipolar financial system, and the US is running out of ways to stop it. Trump's tariff threats are not a demonstration of strength. They reveal Washington's desperation. The US is no longer in control of the global economy, and BRICS is proving that nations can thrive without relying on the dollar. As more countries move toward de-dollarization, develop independent trade networks, and adopt alternative financial systems, the US's grip on global finance is slipping. The era of American economic dominance is ending, and the future belongs to a multipolar world led by BRICS. Tariffs won't stop this shift. They will only push BRICS nations to accelerate their financial independence. The only question left is how long can the US delay the inevitable? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section. Will 150% tariffs work? Subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon to stay tuned. We cover the stories no one else does: politics, the economy, and the growing power shift. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay tuned.